What do the masters of horror have in common? More than you think. Some grew up without fathers, others under the weight of religion. All transform personal fears into the most terrifyingly successful franchises in history, inventing new subgenres along the way. In this video, we'll break down the creators behind two of horror's biggest villain types, Masked and Possessed. Before slashers ruled the 80s, one film in 1974 showed how far terror could go on a shoestring budget. 31-year-old Tobe Hooper unleashed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a film so raw that audiences thought they were watching real murders. Hooper grew up in Austin, Texas, filming with an 8mm camera and later working in documentaries. His inspirations were drawn from real life, the crimes of Ed Gein, the televised brutality of Vietnam, and America's unraveling sense of order. The story followed a group of friends stranded at a rural farmhouse hunted by Leatherface and his cannibal family. Leatherface himself was modeled on Gein, who made masks out of human skin. The spark for the chainsaw came from Hooper's own panic in a crowded department store, imagining the fastest way out was to fire up the tool. Just 1 year earlier, The Exorcist had shocked the world with supernatural terror and a $12 million budget. Hooper went the other way. He delivered horror that felt human, shot for only $140,000, using natural light, 16mm film, and rotting animal carcasses as set dressing. It looked like a police evidence reel more than a Hollywood movie. Unlike the stylish thrills of Psycho or grindhouse splatter, Hooper's restraint made audiences imagine more gore than they saw. Even the release was infamous. The rights went to Bryanston Pictures, the same shady distributor behind Deep Throat. The company was tied to the mob and spread the film nationwide while pocketing most of the profits. It grossed over $30 million in the US, becoming one of the most profitable horror films ever and setting the blueprint for the slasher era. Hooper returned with a campy sequel in 1986, and remakes like the 2003 version made over $100 million, but never matched the original's cultural shockwave. Ridley Scott studied it before Alien. Wes Craven borrowed its family of cannibals idea for The Hills Have Eyes. Quentin Tarantino calls it one of the greatest films ever made. Guillermo del Toro went vegetarian after seeing it. Even Rob Zombie built his horror style around it. If Texas Chainsaw made horror rural, John Carpenter made it suburban. In 1978, the 30-year-old filmmaker took terror out of the backwoods and dropped it right into America's neighborhoods. With just $325,000, Halloween introduced Michael Myers and proved no home was safe, taking the slasher genre to unprecedented territory. Carpenter, raised in Bowling Green, Kentucky, was a USC film grad obsessed with Howard Hawks' stripped-down storytelling. His student film, Dark Star, and follow-up, Assault on Precinct 13, showed he could stretch $1 and build tension across genres. Producer Irwin Yablans wanted a scary movie he could market cheap. He pitched a story about babysitter murders. Carpenter agreed, but only if he had creative control and could compose the score. With financier Mustafa Akkad backing the project and Deborah Hill co-writing and producing, the team was set. Carpenter fused Yablans' idea with Psycho and his own concept of pure evil behind a blank mask. Halloween tapped into a familiar American fear, babysitting on a dark suburban night, and turned it into a nightmare. He used long takes and shadows instead of gore, and made Michael Myers scarier because he had no motive. He wrote the piano score in 3 days, the heartbeat of the movie. Carpenter earned $10,000 to direct but negotiated 10% of the profits, a clause that made him a millionaire when the film exploded. Halloween grossed over $70 million worldwide, breaking Texas Chainsaw's record as the most profitable indie horror of its era. The franchise has since earned over $800 million across 13 sequels and reboots. It launched Jamie Lee Curtis, created the final girl trope, and inspired everything from Friday the 13th to Scream. Carpenter went on to direct The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, and They Live, cementing his legacy as the master of atmosphere and outsider heroes. Today he runs Storm King Productions with his wife Sandy King Carpenter, producing horror comics and scoring new Halloween films. He says he'd rather watch basketball than direct, but his music and his mask never stopped haunting Hollywood. After Halloween broke records, everyone wanted their own masked killer. Producer Sean S. Cunningham was first in line. In 1980, he turned summer camp into a slaughterhouse. It wasn't born from a grand vision, just a fast play to ride Halloween's wave. Cunningham had previously worked with Wes Craven, producing The Last House on the Left in 1972, a grim exploitation film that gave him a taste for controversy. By the late 70s, desperate for a hit, he saw Halloween's box office and decided to make his own stripped-down teen horror. He tapped screenwriter Victor Miller, who subverted expectations by making the killer a grieving mother. Tom Savini, a Vietnam veteran and effects artist, brought battlefield realism to the gore. Counselors at Camp Crystal Lake are hunted one by one until Mrs. Voorhees is revealed. Then came the kicker, young Jason leaping from the lake, a shock ending that changed how slashers closed. Made for $550,000, it pulled in nearly $60 million worldwide. The franchise spawned 11 sequels, a Freddy Krueger crossover, and a 2009 reboot. totaling $465 million. That reboot remains the highest-grossing entry at $91 million. Jason Voorhees, who barely appeared in the first film, became the face of the series. By part 3, he had the hockey mask, a look that defined horror for decades. Cunningham stepped back after the first film, but stayed tied to its legacy. What began as imitation became one of horror's longest-running sagas, with Jason standing shoulder to shoulder with Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. By the mid-'80s, masked killers were everywhere, but audiences had stopped screaming. Wes Craven changed that by taking horror somewhere no one was safe, their dreams. In 1984, the 45-year-old filmmaker unleashed A Nightmare on Elm Street, introducing Freddy Krueger, a dream demon who attacked in sleep. Craven, raised in a strict Baptist home in Cleveland without his father, didn't see a movie until college. He earned a master's in humanities, taught at Clarkson College, then left academia to edit adult films in New York before moving into horror. After Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes in 1977, he was divorced, broke, and searching for a hit. Freddy was born from real reports of Cambodia refugees dying in their sleep after terrifying nightmares, and from a childhood memory of an old man staring at him from the street. He named the killer after a childhood bully. The glove weapon came from primal fears of animal claws, and the sweater from colors proven to clash most harshly with the human retina. The story followed teens hunted in their dreams by a burned child killer. Unlike other slashers, Freddy wasn't bound by reality. He twisted physics, turning bedrooms into traps. His victims were smarter. Nancy fought back, studying Freddy and setting traps herself. Made for $1.1 million, it grossed $57 million. New Line Cinema was near bankruptcy before its release. The film saved the studio and earned it the nickname The House That Freddy Built. The series spawned 9 films and a TV spin-off totaling $470 million. Freddy talked, joked, and became a pop icon, even launching Johnny Depp's career. Craven later reinvented horror again with Scream in 1996, but Freddy remained his most personal monster, born from real nightmares and a lifelong grudge. More than a decade after Freddy, Craven did it again, this time turning the genre inside out. In 1996, Scream sliced through horror cliches and made the slasher meta for a new generation. The spark came from Kevin Williamson's script, sharpened by Craven's veteran direction. Williamson, 31 and waiting tables in Los Angeles, wrote a script that both celebrated and mocked horror's rules. He was inspired after watching a news report about the Gainesville Ripper, a serial killer that hunted college students. Originally titled Scary Movie, it sparked a studio bidding war. Craven, coming off a slump, initially turned it down due to its violence, but came around after recognizing the script's wit. The story followed Ghostface, a masked killer taunting smart, self-aware teens in Woodsboro. The victims weren't clueless. They debated horror logic while living it. Ghostface wasn't supernatural but human, his voice taunting, his identity ever-shifting. The shocking opening killed Drew Barrymore in 12 minutes, proving no one was safe. Made for $15 million, it earned $173 million worldwide. The franchise now tops $740 million across films and TV. It ignited a late 90s teen horror boom of films like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, and Final Destination. Williamson became Hollywood's new youth culture voice, later creating Dawson's Creek and The Vampire Diaries. Craven later directed Music of the Heart in 1999 before returning for 3 more Scream sequels. The Wayans brothers even borrowed Williamson's original title for their parody Scary Movie in 2000. Williamson gave horror a wink. Craven turned that wink into a scream, and together they made the genre self-aware. But between the dawn of Freddy and Ghostface, Don Mancini gave horror a new kind of killer, one hiding in plain sight. In 1988, he created Chucky, the children's doll possessed by a killer's soul. A UCLA film student and the son of a Madison Avenue ad exec, Mancini grew up surrounded by toy marketing. He wrote Blood Buddy as a satire of consumer culture and America's obsession with must-have dolls like Cabbage Patch Kids, My Buddy Dolls, and Teddy Ruxpin. Producer David Kirshner pushed it forward, and director Tom Holland retooled the script, adding the voodoo possession that gave Chucky his soul. Actor Brad Dourif gave him his voice, snarky, vicious, unforgettable. The story centered on a boy and his mother realizing his new toy is possessed by serial killer Charles Lee Ray. It raised emotional stakes, not careless teens, but a family fighting evil. And like Freddy Krueger, Chucky talked, a small, mobile villain with personality. Made for $9 million, it grossed $44 million globally. The franchise now spans 6 sequels, a reboot, and a TV series still run by Mancini. Mancini stayed in control, writing every film and directing several, ultimately helming the franchise to over $350 million in total box office sales. Brad Dourif kept voicing Chucky, joined later by his daughter Fiona, a horror legacy passed down, both on-screen and off. Mancini proved sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we buy off the shelf. With the exception of The Strangers in 2008, a rare hit for masked villains at the time, possessed evil continued to dominate horror. In 2009, 39-year-old Oren Peli turned a $15,000 home video into a worldwide phenomenon. Paranormal Activity made a bedroom door scarier than any monster, and redefined low-budget horror for a new era. Peli was a software programmer from Israel, no film school, no Hollywood ties, just curiosity and strange noises in his new San Diego home. He filmed his own fear, cast 2 unknowns, and used his house as the set. No script, just loose scenes built around dread. Inspired by The Blair Witch Project, he wanted to prove that the scariest thing on screen could be nothing at all. Every scare came from stillness. A door moving, a shadow shifting, a whisper in the dark. It brought found footage from the forest to the suburbs, from lost hikers to couples in bed. Jason Blum saw it, sensed gold, and brought it to studios. Steven Spielberg reportedly championed the cut, convincing Paramount to release it theatrically instead of remaking it. Made for $15,000, it grossed nearly $200 million. The franchise expanded to 7 films, earning almost $900 million total. Peli stayed on as producer and helped launch James Wan's Insidious, becoming one of modern horror's quiet architects. He directed Area 51 and wrote Chernobyl Diaries, but nothing matched that first homegrown nightmare. With a camera, a tripod, and a doorway, Oren Peli re-engineered the genre, the haunted house hacker who turned static shots into screaming prophets. If Paranormal Activity haunted our homes, The Conjuring sanctified them, bringing faith, family, and cinematic scale back to horror. In 2013, James Wan brought the real-life case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, a husband and wife team of paranormal investigators, to the big screen. With writers Chad and Carrie Hayes, he turned the couple's archives of hauntings and exorcisms into the foundation of modern horror's biggest universe. Ed, a self-taught demonologist, and Lorraine, a clairvoyant, claimed to have investigated over 10,000 hauntings since the 1950s, including Annabelle, Amityville, and the Enfield poltergeist. For The Conjuring, the Hayes brothers built the story around the Piran family haunting in 1971 Rhode Island. Both the Hayes twins and Wan grew up Christian, shaping their focus on faith, love, and sacrifice as the film's emotional core. Wan drew on The Exorcist and Poltergeist, reviving classic haunted house cinema. His sweeping long takes and patient shadows turned a farmhouse into a maze of fear. Casting Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as the Warrens gave the film warmth and gravity. Made for $20 million, The Conjuring grossed over $320 million globally. Warner Brothers marketed it as based on a true story, and audiences believed it. It went on to launch The Conjuring universe, with Annabelle, the Nun, and The Crooked Man together grossing more than $2.1 billion, making it the most successful horror franchise in history. The Hayes brothers stayed central, while Wan stepped more into a producer role, only co-writing and directing the 2016 sequel. Wan also leveraged his hit streak to expand into action, directing Furious 7 and Aquaman. New Line Cinema, once the house that Freddy built, became the house that faith rebuilt. But as faith-based horror peaked, a new voice found fear in the mind itself. In 2022, 35-year-old Parker Finn made happiness horrifying. Smile turned a modest studio gamble into one of the decade's biggest horror surprises. Finn studied film at Wright State University in Ohio, where he learned how silence could scream. After college, he shot shorts like The Hide Behind and Laura Hasn't Slept, which won South by Southwest and became the seed for Smile. He was obsessed with nightmares, dream logic, and the fear of losing control, reshaping them into the story of a psychiatrist haunted by a curse that spreads through a sinister smile. Like The Ring and It Follows, Smile treated fear like a virus, but Finn made it personal, grounded in trauma, guilt, and anxiety. His style mixed David Fincher's dread, Ari Aster's emotion, and the quiet unease of J-horror classics like Ringu and Pulse. The monster wasn't a creature, it was a grin. Familiar, human, and wrong. Post-pandemic 2022 saw a revival of original horror, The Black Phone, Nope, and Smile. But Finn's film hit different. No big names, no spectacle. Just a first-time director twisting comfort into terror. Originally meant for streaming, it tested so well with fans that Paramount flipped it into a theatrical release, and it roared to life on the big screen. Paramount's viral marketing became legend too. Actors sat behind home plate at MLB games, smiling straight into the cameras. And it worked. The internet couldn't look away. Made for $17 million, Smile earned over $217 million worldwide. Pure shock therapy for Paramount. Finn returned 2 years later with Smile 2, inspired by fame, anxiety, and the curse of attention. The sequel expanded the infection and pushed the franchise past $400 million total. 2 films, 1 expression, and a new face of psychological horror. Masked villains defined the slasher era, but possessed villains proved to be the more dominant home for horror franchises over time. In the next video, we'll dive into the creators behind the other 2 major villain types, systemic and cosmic. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, leave a comment sharing the scariest movie you've ever seen.